I traveled to Sao Paulo, where I did field recordings of different construction sites and sounds of the city.
How did it affect me spiritually? Speaking of connectivity, usually when I make music and when I'm conceptualizing pieces, I'm very connected to devices, I'm very connected to technology, and being in the jungle is the complete opposite of that. So I really just spent a lot of time listening, and just listening to what the universe was presenting me. And there's a power to that when you're not trying to fill the space in your mind with stuff that's coming from you, but actually pulling from an external force, like pulling from the sounds around you in the jungle, pulling from everything that's surrounding you in this limitless sound palette. So, and it doesn't come from you. But oftentimes as a producer, like, I'm stuck in my computer and I'm in my box and I'm spending 15 hours inside of my studio and I'm generating sounds inside of the context of a world, a digital world. So pulling it from a place that was very real was something that I would do a little bit, but not entirely. I was really submerged in the jungle, and I stayed in the jungle and I slept under the stars of the Guarani next to spider webs and well, the whole project was 10 days, so it was 10 days of just hardcore shooting the whole time. And it was a weird thing because I flew basically from China. I composed the music for this theater piece, and the performance was in China, and then, which is super crazy industrialized, and then going to 48 hours later I'm in the jungle. So that was like definitely a psychological trip. I mean, you have to define what freedom is. No one can take away your musical freedom or your artistic expression unless you let them. So the limitations that you put on yourself as a musician are always inevitably self-inflicted, whether you're composing with a particular target group in mind or within the realm of what you think people will like. Those are not societal conditions. They're conditions that you put upon yourself, and that's a musical territory that I don't enter. The freedom was not an easy transition for me, because when I studied, I was doing so much at once, and my hours were so intensely scientifically oriented, and so when all of that scheduling, that I really had a rigid schedule. Like, if I was in the laboratory and I would start growing a cell culture cell culture clones, you've got like 13 hours before you can like extract them, and then like
I'm trying to make sense of every concept. I know cells.
Yeah, and then then
no, it's fine.
and extract the genetic material, mutate them. It's a very rigid schedule, and between that I was studying, and then I was taking recording engineering classes, and the rigid schedule that you have within science is very different from the one that you have to create for yourself as an artist. And I approached music with the same work ethic. So even though I wasn't in the lab for 13 hours, maybe I'd be in front of a computer learning all the odds and ends of music production. I guess it's always returning to a state of just loving what you're doing and not taking anyone or anything into consideration when you're doing that, in the sense that as long as you're really loving what you're creating and you're passionate about what you're doing, and if you're not, then figure it out and get to that state, then it changes like the whole creative process. Like my favorite scientist is Nikola Tesla, and he describes the way that it feels when you come across a new invention, which I like to think of as like coming across a new song or like creating a new piece of artwork. It's like when he was inventing something, that everything else, he became inflamed with this like passion, that outweighed sleep, friends, love, relationships, everything, he would just let that whole process consume him to the point where he was in a state of completely loving what he was doing. And I think as an artist, you need to do something similar. I suppose with our perceptions, that happens in every regard of life. Like, just two people stare at an object and have two completely different ideas of what that object represents as reflections of themselves. So as an artist, I like to think of the objects that I create or the music that I create as these projections of the mind of the observer. So the objects stare back, and they're only reflections of, they're only as powerful as the people that are viewing them